Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. This is Zakiziel here, and today I'll be reacting to Fear and Hunger Pantheon Gro-goroth by MythMasterMao. This was requested by Flying Rider on Discord. And if you'd like to make requests directly, then you can also join the Discord, a link to which will be in the description box below. And without further ado, let us get into the video.
We are entering, indeed, the realm of King Death. The Great Chief. Death.
If I remember correctly from the previous Fear and Hunger video, Fear and Hunger lore video that I reacted to, Gro-goroth represents, well, not just death, but also destruction. So I'm expecting, I'm expecting just that, death and destruction.
So today we'll be discussing the older god named Gro-goroth, and what the older gods are. See, at first, the older gods of the Fear and Hunger world might appear to be analogous to the gods of the Cthulhu mythos and other cosmic horror media. But personally, I think the far more interesting and rewarding way of viewing them is as reflections of real-world ideas on the divine and immaterial. By doing this, we're going to find stuff in the lore that make the gods even more interesting and fun to talk about. And there is no better deity to begin this topic than with Gro-goroth, the Destroyer.
That gives me the in general, they're like, by default, most works are going to draw at least some level of inspiration from real life. But I'm kind of curious then, what it'll be drawing the inspirations from, because I already know that apparently Fear and Hunger drew a lot of experience from Berserk.
Gro-goroth is the god that enforces his will on the universe through force. This is most useful to the player because he gives us access to devastating firepower in the form of his spells. He is the destroyer of men, the divider, the gouger, the ripper, the devourer. His disciples dance the dance of destruction, a la the Hindu Nataraja. His symbol is of a sun being eclipsed by a great circle. Of course, this is iconography Fear and Hunger players are no doubt intimately familiar with every time they decide to bet heads during a coin toss. He is the destruction.
So I'm guessing then that the sides on the coin are probably, one is Gro-goroth's symbol, but what was the other one?
Doubt intimately familiar with every time they decide to bet heads during a coin toss.
Oh.
He is the destruction that wipes
Oh, so Gro-goroth is the tail side of the coin.
the slate clean, making room for new life. Simply put, Gro-goroth is death. Within the Fear and Hunger world, Gro-goroth casts a long shadow. He's the most prominent older god in the first game. The Yellow Mages tell us as much when asked why they serve Gro-goroth before the other gods. Traces left of Gro-goroth are the strongest among older gods. No other ancient being is still so vivid in this day and age. Like all mages, apprentices, and priests, I strive for personal growth and for greater power. Gro-goroth has the most to offer. In the end, you cannot please all of them, now can you? What we see of life outside of...
Oh, that's a nice thing, being able to actually talk to your adversaries, because I'm assuming that's a battle screen where you've encountered that yellow mage.
Dungeons backs up what the yellow mage has to say. We see decay, pestilence, bloodshed, and death. This is little wonder then that Gro-goroth has pride of place in the dungeons. Indeed, the ritual circles we come across all bear his mark. As early as Darcy's intro do we hear of Legard's army, the Knights of the Midnight Sun, which might be a sly invocation of Gro-goroth in connection with the idea of Gro-goroth as the Eclipse, the bringer of darkness and change. The Black Witch we find in the dungeons refers to their channeling of Gro-goroth as the Blood Arts, which is quite appropriate since all of Gro-goroth's magic is themed around inflicting damage, drawing blood, or having mastery over death. Furthermore, Gro-goroth rewards sacrifice and bloodshed in his name. We can sacrifice ghouls, children, and even a wolf to Gro-goroth in exchange for his affinity. Cannibalism also gains his attention. Of course, we can find a far better source for information on Gro-goroth in the dungeons than the cruel magicians we find littering its halls. No video on Gro-goroth would be complete without referring to the Traces of Gro-goroth, the final boss of the ending B route in the first game. If you reach the bottom of the gauntlet without the girl in your party, you'll be faced with this divine juggernaut. If you manage to prevail, he grows interested in you, asking why you resist. Any answer given will lead to one of the biggest reveals of the lore. The older gods, they do not even exist in this world anymore. The older gods are too pure for this world. They are the true forms of the feelings and ideas that linger in men. But humans, they are too tainted by their own mind and ambition to understand purity. Think of the perfect shape of fear and destruction. Now take a look at the world you delve. Do you see that shape? The shape could never exist among men, because the shape varies between every human. If you could truly see the shape everyone shares, it would shatter the individual mind and existence. Humans are weak.
So it's kind of similar to how you can't really look at the great old ones in the Cthulhu mythos because they're just beyond mortal comprehension, and to gaze upon one would cause insanity.
I can reveal the true form, glimpses of it. The older gods had already left humanity long ago. Humanity was not abandoned by them in recent memory to be saved by the new gods, false prophets that they were. They were gone well before the events of either game, although exactly when is unclear. Additionally, we are told that the older gods are pure and true forms of the feelings and ideas that linger in men. But humans are too tainted by their thoughts and desires, therefore they cannot understand the purity. This is the moment at which the older gods cease to be merely cosmic horror monsters and are revealed as being representative of Platonic forms.
Platonic forms, so like was again? Plato's philosophy, which I don't remember what that was about actually.
Roughly put, Plato's theory of forms can be explained as thus. There is a single, eternal, unchanging, indivisible, and non-sensible form corresponding to every predicate or property. The theoretical function of these forms is to explain why things have the properties they do. Thus, it is by virtue of being in some way related to the form of beauty that beautiful things are beautiful. Fundamental to this theory is the claim that forms are separate from, at least in the sense of not being identical to, the things that partake of them. Gro-goroth is the true form of destruction. All acts of destruction, and indeed his own magic, are acts of destruction by virtue of them being related to him, just like the example of beautiful things being related to the form of beauty. The older gods come from the green, the timeless eternal realm outside of our reality.
You know, the whole thing where the old gods are supposed to represent the purest form of a concept, but that humans can't really get it because each is a different interpretation of that given concept. It reminds me of that phrase about beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
It is only there that Gro-goroth still exists in its pure form. Any remains of Gro-goroth in the mortal realm are merely a shadow or a fingertip. To best describe the relation of the older gods and the mortal world, I will use a metaphor. There are two worlds. The mortal world, which is ephemeral and tied to a linear progression of time and cycles of birth, growth, and death. Then there's the immortal world, which is eternal and unchanging, existing at all points of time and not bound to linear time. The immortal world is like a sheet of white paper, ready to be colored and given properties and character, while the immortal world is like a green paper sphere surrounding the mortal world. The old gods are like iron nails punching through both sheets of paper, first punching through the green circle from the outside, and then into the white paper. A nail observed from its side is like a pillar. They are the pillars that define and give structure to reality. If you saw a sheet of paper with a nail stuck into it, your eye would immediately be drawn to the nail. The pillars end up defining the sheet of paper, just as the acts and the presence of the old gods have altered and defined the mortal world.
You know, the pillar analogy also kind of reminds me of the Pillars of Nosgoth from the, what's it called again? Legacy of Kain series?
However, eventually the nail recedes from the white sheet of paper, but remains embedded in the green circle still. It still exists, but it is gone from the white sheet. But the hole left in the white sheet is evidence that there was once a nail struck through it. And any discoloration on the white sheet from the iron nail still gives character to the sheet of paper, along with any leftover shavings or detritus from the nail. The hole is the mark the older gods left on the world, and the discoloration and detritus are their traces. As for a time when the older gods remained with us still, the studies of Sylvian describes a time in ancient history where mankind was but a synchronized mass of flesh in permanent coitus.
By the way, I do find funny how Sylvian's statue here is quite phallic in shape.
Engaging in the gift of Sylvian's love magic. Mahabharata, as we find it, appears to have held Gro-goroth as their principal deity, before Almar and the new gods took dominion. However, I would like to propose an idea. It is not simply that the older gods have moved away from humanity, but that there is also a figurative distance between humanity and the older gods that lengthens with time as humanity develops as a species. Mahabharata is ancient. The medieval world of the first game holds Almar and the new gods in prominence. And finally, by the time of Termina, the gods are now the subject of museum exhibits and legend. But this doesn't mean the older gods are dead or gone as such. If man can hold the idea of them in their mind, their power can be reached or channeled. The beekeepers in Termina are evidence of this enough.
You know, normally, I don't go near fire for totally normal reasons, but that thing is something that I would say kill it with fire.
Products of the god of depth's power, despite god of depths being almost entirely superseded by the god of fear and hunger. Orange, the artist behind Fear and Hunger, has clearly been inspired by real-world myth, religion, and occultism in writing the Fear and Hunger series, and in Gro-goroth we can find a number of possible influences. According to Joseph Campbell, the two great mythological motifs of prehistory are death and sex. Death must be reckoned with by man, or as Joseph Campbell puts it, we may say then that the interdependence of death and sex, their imports as the complementary aspects of a single state of being, and the necessity of killing and eating, for the continuance of all things on earth, the animals, birds, and fish, as well as man. This deeply moving, emotionally disturbing glimpse of death as the life of the living is the fundamental motivation supporting the rites around which the social structures of early planting villages was composed. Yet, Gro-goroth's power of destruction is not simply that of the interplay of death and sex at the dawn of humanity. Gro-goroth's very power seems to have made him tantamount to the king of the gods for ancient Mahabharata. In Mahabharata, we see his great statue in the model of Zeus, king of the gods, seated on his throne. We also find a mural of a procession of kings leading sacrifices to Gro-goroth. Do you notice how the procession resembles the statues of the kings in the Tomb of the Gods? Clearly,
Those statues also look rather phallic as well, to be honest.
worship of Gro-goroth went hand in hand with kingship in Mahabharata. In the past, in our world, kings were also often high priests. It only makes sense then to see kings offering sacrifices to their patrons.
You know, it makes sense actually, considering how in the sheer number of cultures where monarchs were based on either A, they were believed to be the agents of whatever deity the people believed in on Earth, or that B, in some cases, that they were the deities in human form, or were a link between the deities and their mortal subjects.
Patron deity in Mahabharata. Back to the statue. Gro-goroth is holding a snake straightened out into the shape of a staff or scepter. Now, talking about snakes and their place in the world of fear and hunger really deserves its own video, which, by the way, shout out to Worm Girl. But briefly put, we see snakes as symbols of kingship and authority throughout both games. Both forms of the guard carry one, and we see it wrapped around the cross on the martyr effigy in Termina. Gro-goroth's straightened out serpent scepter is a symbol of his and humanity's conquest and authority over the pre-human residents of Mahabharata. This, then, is a mythological motif in the real world seen time and time again. A triumphing hero or king or god who overcomes the forces of chaos, often represented by a serpent or a dragon.
Like in the case of Egyptian mythology, there's Apep, also known, I think, as Apophis, who gets, if I remember correctly, I think it was that they get their head crushed by, was it a hawk or was it a cat? One of the Egyptian gods basically kills Apophis by, it was either crushing his head or by stabbing him through the head.
They set a constellation in the middle and addressed Marduk, their son. Your destiny, Bel, is superior to that of all the gods. Command and bring about annihilation and recreation. Let the constellation disappear at your utterance. With a second command, let the constellation reappear. He gave the command, and the constellation disappeared. With a second command, the constellation came into being again. When the gods, his fathers, saw the effect of his utterance, they rejoiced and offered congratulation. Marduk is the king. They added to him a mace, a throne, and a rod. They gave him an irresistible weapon that overwhelms the foe. They said, "Go, cut Tiamat's throat, and let the winds bear up her blood to give the news." In Orange's strange universe, the hero of the war against chaos is none other than the destroying death god. It is abundantly clear in the Enuma Elish that Marduk's kingly authority is derived from the raw power he can bring to bear against Tiamat. No wonder, then, that the human kings of Mahabharata revered Gro-goroth's brute power and paid homage to him. Reinforcing this
Ah, so the idea of might makes right.
theory, Gro-goroth and his worship can be connected to the sacrifice of kings that we find in Joseph Campbell's work. The act of sacrificing the king himself was part of the ordered cosmos. Indeed, in one example from an Indian province, the king would mount a scaffold as a temple and cut off pieces of his own flesh before finally slitting their own throat before the people. The holder of the highest office in society prostrates himself before death, their corpse heralding renewal and a new dawn. We have already touched on the self-sacrificial element of Gro-goroth's worship, but the point bears repeating, as it resembles the Thanatos urge in Freudian psychology, the urge of aggression and destruction turned inward upon itself. Shout out to Uranium's Glorious Junkyard, who was the first I saw to mention this. To close the discussion on Gro-goroth and Kingship, I will draw some parallels with the teachings of the Meditations on the Tarot, a journey into Christian Hermeticism. There, we can see a reason behind why Gro-goroth's destructive force
Burger King in Gro-goroth.
can be related to divine authority.
I did not expect to see that.
Fundamentally, Gro-goroth must also be the force of emptiness, nothingness, and death. In the Meditations, the anonymous author notes that emptiness is a precondition for authority. To renounce all will result in the flooding in of divine initiative into that emptiness, creating a natural divine authority. We know nothing that supports Gro-goroth receiving a flow of authority from some higher divine being.
Although it does follow how when there's a power vacuum, that usually invites its people to scramble to take power.
However, elements of Gro-goroth's character and appearance suggest his renunciations. The traces we fight and the illustration in Enki's skin Bible show him as blindfolded. He has renounced sight. Gro-goroth is said not to target anyone with his destruction specifically. His power simply exists. He has renounced action.
That also kind of reminds me of how, in nature, forces such as, or rather, things such as earthquakes, hurricanes, tsunamis, they're indiscriminate and they just kind of happen where they happen. They don't target any one place or person specifically.
We read that Gro-goroth walks among humanity in their guise, blessing them with his blood magic. He has renounced identity. And of course, we already know that he's renounced an active presence in the world itself, leaving for the immortal world long ago. He has renounced intervention. The void that God, the God of Jesus and Abraham, created by withdrawing himself from part of his creation, the author tells us, is the place of origin of freedom itself. The place of origin for existence and potentiality. It is not determined by any one thing. Freedom starts with renunciation. God has given us freedom owing to his creation of us. By being separate spirits, we are by definition existing for ourselves. If we lacked freedom, we would simply be part of a different spiritual entity.
So kind of like the idea of between being a part of, say, a hive mind and being an individual.
Which we are not. By freeing us and not keeping us in chains, God has established a legitimate and loving authority over us. For what is authority, if not the ability to give or take away freedom from others? In the fear and hunger world, Gro-goroth has given humanity the tools to enact change, but he himself has withdrawn from affecting the world. This is the great paradox of Gro-goroth. He is representative of change and action. His very sign is the movement of a celestial object in front of the sun. But he is also death itself. Emptiness. Nothing. In the idea of Gro-goroth as patron of kings, we find the paradox of themes resolved. His power over death and destruction is connected with the brute authority and power of temporal kings. Power to enslave and reduce your enemies to rubble. But Gro-goroth as representative of renunciation and void, no space, is a font of divine authority. A clean slate is freedom itself, a canvas waiting to be filled. It represents change and potential. That gift of potential to humanity is the mark of Gro-goroth's authority. However, by the time of Fear-n-Hunger 1 and Termina, this has been forgotten, and Gro-goroth is only the god of bloodshed, violence, and destruction. He is all of these things, but there must have been a time when he was seen as a font of authority too. And as our mind turns back to a time when the old gods are prominent, Gro-goroth's counterpart arises in our waking mind.
Alright, yeah.
Thank you for watching my
Sylvian,
video.
right?
I apologize if it was a little rough around the edges. This is my first time making a video like this, so I hope I managed to make something enjoyable and engaging. Let me know how you feel about the video in the comments. I would appreciate the feedback. I realize I say some pretty wild stuff, but I believe theories need to be fun to come up with. Otherwise, why bother? My next video will be on the goddess of love, Sylvian. Please look forward to it. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Well, that was quite informative and fun to watch as well. I'm honestly surprised that MythMasterMao doesn't have more subscribers. I see they only have 36. Well, I'd recommend that you guys subscribe to them if you like this sort of stuff. And I hope you guys enjoyed watching with me. The link to the original video will be in the description box below. Oh, and if you did enjoy watching this with me, I'd appreciate if you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps. But until next time, ta-ta!